early on in my training, I was always drawn to characters. One of them was like Wojciech, the German expressionistic play, a guy who is troubled and is broken in many ways, he's still trying to go ahead and succeed in his life and be the best guy he can be, but he's got a lot of weird stuff going on along the way that draws him in and that takes him down and takes that energy down. For me, I've always been drawn to it. Like I said, it's always been exciting to try and explore something that has all of that dimension.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Dylan Baker is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character? Is there a typical first step that you take?
Yeah, there is. For me, it's literally erasing everything else. I basically take a script, and because I'm a very visual person, from the longest time, I literally would memorize lines, and as I said them on stage, I would see how they were written on the page. And it was a little distracting.
Wow, yeah.
So I started doing it myself, and especially once I had a computer, but I would, type them before and now type them on a computer. And I typed just my lines, which, shorthand for actors is my line, bullshit, my line.
Yeah.
And I just write all of my lines, and I just go over those lines. So I know nothing about cues. I know nothing about context immediately. I've read the play, so I have a pretty good idea of context. And I just work on that. Because I have always learned that you've got to know where you are. My best ability in terms of acting is to know everything about my character, everything about what I'm thinking, everything about my view of things. So that when I get into a scene, say if it's a television show, I come into it and all of a sudden there's other people there and I can totally be free to react to everything that's going on because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I've planned how I'm going to do it. It just means I have the ability to step into a situation and fit in however I want to, whatever sort of chores or jobs I've given for myself in terms of fitting in this world. That's where I start.
When you say I work on that, then you mean literally just the text. You're not working on making these lines somehow make sense to what your character is supposed to be. You're saying initially it's just learning the text.
Yeah, and wherever that takes you, all of a sudden you're talking about something and you need to look up definitions.
Right.
You're talking about something, you need to look up pronunciations of different things, if it's a different accent or whatever.
Right.
But also, all of a sudden you could be talking about something and say, well, I have no idea what that is, and you start doing research, or you talk about another person. Well, who is that person? And it starts leading you into it. If it's a fictional person, then you've got to go back to the text and start learning about that person. And so you have a real idea of what your relationship is. My wife Becky had a acting teacher that has become also my sort of go-to script guy, a guy named Peter Flood. And Peter Flood always said, it's so important to look at what everybody else says about you. Look at a script and see how they reference you, what they talk about you, because that also is the clues that can lead you in your character. You don't have to satisfy those things. You just have to know how they talk about you.
Yes.
because people can talk about you for any number of reasons. It doesn't have to fit.
Right. Well, see, and I could also say then, like, well, why, if you want to have these horse blinders on about your character, why is it important to know what other people are saying? Whereas if that character was alive and living, would not know what people are saying about them unless they were in the room. Why would I want to take that in if in real life I wouldn't know that?
Well, it's a good question. I think for me it is information
Clues,
that I
right?
want to know. It is, like you say, clues, but it's also something I can reject totally.
Right.
But I don't want to be in ignorance of it.
Yeah.
I can remember I did a film with Demi Moore, a film called Disclosure. And she was a computer expert and this mind that could go, and we had to do her scene again and again on this long speech about computers. And at one point she was having a little trouble with it, and someone came up to her and said, would it help for me to explain what and she said, no, God, no, that will only confuse me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now, I have to say that Barry Levinson filmed it from 17 different angles and so many different times that when you see the film, it's like, wow, Demi Moore is a computer genius. And it works like a charm. So her process worked just for her, what she needed to do. And I don't know what she was concentrating on, but it was not, oh, how does this text fit into the making of a great database? Whereas I probably would get distracted with that if I was looking at that character and let it help me. The other thing just because you have that information, it doesn't affect your speech, what you say, how you say it. I was talking about this with somebody else who said that I have frequently seen actors, and as they look at the script, they say, okay, I wouldn't say that's clumsy to me. I would say ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. And they fit it more and more to them. And it happens more in film script and TV script, but it also happens in plays too. And sometimes all the time, I try to go for the odd phrase. And what does how that person puts together English, how does that affect me? How does that change my rhythm? Because it starts making a character out of where those rhythms come from. Because I don't want it to be the way I would talk. I want it to be the way this person would talk.
And where do you think that impetus comes from? It's just fear, right? I mean, there's so much fear initially, and no matter who you are, how many times you've done this, of this new thing, and it's like, oh, I have to just make it so it's relatable to me, and then you start changing it, and then your fear is going away, but the character is also going away, I guess is what you're saying. Instead of just facing the fear and realizing some of this is awkward, but let's figure out why this is awkward, or maybe that awkwardness is, like you're saying, is going to lead me more to actually discovering the character.
I think a lot of it comes from your background. How did you learn to do a part? And if it's on the stage and you learn doing theater, that's totally different than having just been in front of a camera. Because you will see a lot of 17-year-old kids that are hailed as geniuses who have never learned really anything about a part or anything, so that when they get a script, what choice do they have but to say, okay, I've got to make this closer to me, or I won't feel comfortable enough to kind of just sit there and do my thing. And a lot of those 17-year-old kids all of a sudden find out at 23, 24 that people are saying, don't you have anything other than that? And they're like, what do you mean? It's always worked fine.
This is I've been using this to great effect. What are you saying? When you think about your training foundation as an actor, and all these years later, you're sitting here right now, I'm asking you questions about process. Tell me some of the things that haven't changed since that foundation, that have only kind of grown from that seed of training, and then also tell me some of the things that you've completely rejected through experience from that training.
I guess it was 76 when my first day of undergraduate at William & Mary, I auditioned for a play. And so I assumed that's when I started learning how to act. It was about 3 months later, I was in a director's class, and it was me and another woman who was very talented actor and the director, and we were doing ghosts because, of course, that's immediately what you should do when you're a beginning actor, is Ibsen. And I was doing this scene, and I thought it was going great because I had said, oh, this guy, Pastor Manders or whoever the hell he was like my uncle. So my uncle's is like this, and so I'll be like that. And I thought basically, and I held on to that for quite a few years, that acting was finding somebody that was like that character and imitating that character, that person, that real person. And you could find the real things about them to fit into whatever the part was. And while we were working on this ghost scene, all of a sudden the other actress was upset. And the director kept saying, what's wrong? What's wrong? And finally she said, Dylan won't look at me. And I was kind of shocked because I thought, I'm doing my thing. I'm succeeding amazingly. Uncle Jim is coming right through into this character. So what's the problem? And now I need to look at you? That's a whole nother thing. Okay, I could do that. Nobody told me that was part of it. So I think I continued that. I did, a bunch of different stuff for years in summer theater and for many seasons. And then I went to the Yale School of Drama. And it was like 1983, 84 that I worked with a guy named David Hammond. And he scared the hell out of me. He was teaching Shakespeare, but he was pushing something on me that he was demanding of me. And I didn't understand it. And I kept, what it was that he wanted me, with my breath, to take in what was going on so that my breath coming out would respond to that. Wow. And it was, I mean, I can remember actually, saying to him, you're serious. You really want me to do this, after months of him asking me. It reminds me of Michael Jordan when he was playing basketball at UNC. Dean Smith, one day after he was a junior in practice before the season, he turned to him and said, you really want me to play defense, don't you? Dean Smith was like, yes, I do. Yeah. And of course, he learned how to play defense and became a superstar. Yeah. The same thing happened with me. I became a superstar. But
first comparison to Michael Jordan on this podcast.
I started, hearing what David Hammond had to say, and it was also the same thing of like someone says a line, you react to it. But previously, I had so chartered myself by imitating some person, and then closer and closer imitating what this character could be, that I think in my mind there wasn't room for reacting to whatever anybody said, because I already knew where I was going to go. So when David finally got this lesson through to me, it was revelatory. It was like an explosion that happened to me, that all of a sudden I literally didn't know what I'd be doing. But that didn't negate all of the work you have to do beforehand, so that you are completely ready. You know what the character is, but you have no idea what the circumstances are that you're gonna get. And so you have to react, and especially to that person you're talking to. What do they say? You've got to hear it so that you can react honestly to it. So I would say that I'm still doing. That's the most exciting thing I've heard, and the thing that stayed with me all these years.
Do you think if you didn't have that revelation,
I'd still be playing Uncle Jim? Yeah.
And you might, we know people that do this, right?
Yeah.
They have careers.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to get at, that puts you in the moment, which me as an audience member, I'm seeing as you're alive. Mm-hmm. An actor has to have some version of this story. They have to take it to that in order to be alive.
It's interesting. I also direct, and I was directing a play once, and I had an actor that was like I had been. And I was really working on him to change so that he didn't know what he was going to do. And all of a sudden we had a rehearsal where it happened. And I was like, that's it. That's it. Do you feel that? Do you feel that? And he just got back into his head. And so I was like, what? What are you doing? He said, well, I know I did it, but I'm trying to figure out how to recreate that. I couldn't believe it. And he insisted that's the way that was done. Yeah. Because you can't do a show 8 shows a week where it's just, And that drove me crazy. But.
Yeah. We must talk about someone who I think is probably a very important person in your early life, Nikos Psacharopoulos. Can you talk a little bit about him and who he was and how he was important to your career?
Nikos was an acting teacher. I think when he was found by this group in Williamstown, Massachusetts, who decided to start a summer theater. They were a part of the Williams College community and the theater program there. And they decided they wanted to start a theater. And they found Nikos as a director, as a person that could come up and do some shows. And so he agreed to that. He came up. I think he was teaching at Yale undergrad at the time. And Nikos was from Greece, but he spoke English. It's funny, as his life went on, his English got worse and worse and his accent got stronger and stronger. Nikos was a very dynamic producer. He was a very, very good teacher, acting teacher. As a director, he was hit and miss. And I think if he were still with us today, he died tragically young because he refused to go see a doctor until it was too late. Nikos would sort of direct in the same way that his Greek background was, which was let's work on the scenes, let's work on each of the scenes, and then when we do the first performance, let's see what it's like when it runs all together. He hardly ever did run-throughs.
Really?
He didn't care about run-throughs. He just wanted to work on those scenes and get good actors who would get a sense of it and then trust in them to try and remember when this scene came after this, when this goes here. And sometimes it worked great. I was in a production of Peer Gynt that our first preview was one of the most exciting things I've ever been in. And people went crazy about it. It was a 3-hour show that they went nuts about. It was very exciting. But Nikos, I went to his, I actually auditioned for Williamstown the year before I went to Yale School of Drama. And I went up and auditioned for Bonnie Monty and some other people who became a longtime friend. And I did my audition having been working at the Folger Shakespeare Theater down in Washington, D.C. And by the time I got from New York back to Washington, the rejection letter was in my box. So then I became a student at Yale School of Drama, and all of a sudden there was an audition for Nikos in his office, just me, 6 monologues of Chekhov, of Strindberg, of Ibsen, whatever, but he wanted some different things. And so I put up some things and he took a liking to me. And he brought me in as a non-union actor for 2 summers in a row. And then the 3rd summer, he gave me my first union job. I played a part in a huge production of Undiscovered Country, this Schnitzler play that was adapted by Tom Stoppard. And it was a wonderful, wonderful play. It was a big, sprawling thing, again, that he directed, and it was all over the place and pretty much came together. It was a pretty good production. But because I was there, and because Nikos had also done something else, he'd run into me in the spring of that year, which was 85, and given me a play. I said, take a look at it. I said, what? He said, we're doing it this summer, but just just take a look at it. And it was a play called Not About Heroes. It was two World War I poets, Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen. And I read this play, and Wilfred Owen is about 20 years old, and 22 years, whatever I was. And I was 26 at the time. And the Siegfried Sassoon was Ed Herman. Edward Herman was going to be coming that summer and doing the play. So I started working on it, and it was an English accent. It was different things, learning all this stuff about the time, learning about World War I, what was happening, why these guys were in this hospital together. And Nikos had handed it to me without anything. So then I get there for the summer. We're working on that play. And the next thing I know, it's the last day, and I'm thinking about going back to New York unemployed. And another play, To Whom It May Concern, which was directed by Geraldine Fitzgerald and written by Carol Hall, who had written The Best Little House in Texas. They were going into tech, and they had to fire somebody, and they needed somebody. And there I was, and I was available. The music director, Michael O'Flaherty, said, "Dylan, are you around?" And I said, "Yeah, I got nothing." So they put me in the play, and I got to stay there just for a few more weeks. Doing that, met my wife, Becky Gelke, she was at that point, she was in the play. Because I was there, Ed Herman showed up, getting ready to start rehearsals on Not About Heroes. And I went up to him. I'd met him the year before, and we'd worked together, and I was like, "Hey, Ed." And I said, "Hey, Nikos handed me a copy of this play, Not About Heroes," and I read it. And Ed went, "Why did he do that? Why? Oh, God damn it. Why did Nikos do that? Željko Ivanek is playing that part." I was like, no, I totally get it. No, I just wanted to tell you I liked it. He just walked away. He was like, why would Nikos? He was so mad at Nikos. So then about a week before they started rehearsals, Ed came up to me and said, "Dylan, Željko's just told me he has to drop out of the play. He's not available. Oh. Why don't we have an audition we'll sit down and read the play together." I'd been working on it for 3 months. Yeah. And we had the first rehearsal. Diane Wiest was the director. And it was clear right away that this was going to work just fine. And we ended up moving off Broadway, and it was my first show in New York. Wow. So Nikos handed me really a career in New York, because it was Frank Rich reviewed it, and I got a Theater World Award for it. I also got an Obie Award. So, I all of a sudden had inroads and doors opening to me in a huge way. So that was all from Nikos. So yes, he was really important to me.
At that point in your life, were you thinking, I'm going to be spending my life on the stage? Were you that kind of actor at that point, or were you always thinking, I got to get to Hollywood and see what they got?
Well, I can tell you this, that I went into my agent, who was Brian Mann at the time. He moved over to ICM, and when he moved over, I went there right around the time that Not About Heroes started in New York. And Brian had me in his office, and he said, "So what are you looking at? What do you want to do?" And I said what I really felt, which was, I've always heard that the Arena Theater down in Washington, D.C., they have a core of actors, a company of actors, and then you do different parts in different shows all season long. And that sounded amazing to me. Yeah. And he said, "Well, if you're interested in that, there's the door." So I became uninterested in doing that on the spot, because Brian said, "I'm interested in getting you into film and television." So I was like, okay, I can do that. So I immediately started listening to him, and luckily enough, I started having some auditions that I was able to get.
Obviously, there are a lot of good actors, but few of them are heroic actors. Let me tell you what that is. I think you're a heroic actor. You take roles that are potentially, what's the word now? Problematic. I first became aware of you with Happiness. Your performance in that film is so extraordinary, and then to realize the monster that you're playing when a role like that comes along, are you just the kind of person that is like, that is juicy, that is what I want? Forget what the implication of me playing this is. As an actor, as a person, what, like, embodying this thing, what that, the ramifications of that. Are you someone who says, forget all that? This is what actors do. They play monsters. This is an ultimate monster. I want stuff like this.
I think early on in my training, I was always drawn to characters. One of them was like Wojciech, the German expressionistic play, a guy who is troubled and is broken in many ways, he's still trying to go ahead and succeed in his life and be the best guy he can be, but he's got a lot of weird stuff going on along the way that draws him in and that takes him down and takes that energy down. For me, I've been drawn to it. Like I said, it's always been exciting to try and explore something that has all of that dimension. It also, I mean, when Happiness, when I read that script, it was all of that. It was the total excitement of a guy who was that crazily damaged, but still loves his family and is trying to do all he can to do well for his family and to give a good life to his family. The thing I loved about Happiness was it got the audience in the very uncomfortable position of pulling for some guy that they shouldn't like, that they should shun, that they should cancel. And in this film, it was fully explored that way, which was so exciting to me. I remember when I was offered it, I was told basically, I think it was Todd himself that said, the studio had said, you've got to have an A-list or at least a B-list out. You've got to have somebody up there. And he had gone through and he had offered it to people and no one would even consider doing it. They just were like, not in a million years would I do this. And so that when it came to me, I can remember I had like a little sit down with myself for 10 minutes going, now this could be a problem and this could be this and that. Forget it. It's like, this is what I got in this business for, was to look after something. I mean, this character, look at this character. So I plunged in and I was surprised when there was some reaction immediately. I mean, like the next film, I got offered a film which hadn't happened before. And it was a fantastic writer and director. He directed Kinsey that I was in. And it was a film about a gay couple and some relatives were coming. And there's one of the couple is with his lover's nephew, he's talking to him about something. And he says, have you never heard of Judy Garland? And he's, no. So he takes him up into his bedroom and puts on a record of Judy Garland in the bedroom, and it's innocent. But when I read that, I just said, I can't do that. There's just not after, I can't be the guy taking up my lover's nephew into the bedroom to play Judy. I just can't, that's just not, that's not good. So there was that. There was also, I did a movie for Chris Rock, called Head of State. And when I came in for the audition, he and Ali LaRoy, his producer, it was only about a year after Happiness, and I hadn't had many, so I was like thrilled and I was excited about the part, and they were going to tape me and put me on, but Chris Rock was just kept looking at me and going, you're that guy. You're that guy from Happiness. You're that guy. And they were just giggling with each other so much and making jokes about it. And I was like, yeah. And I said, should I go ahead and do this? And he was like, yeah, sure. So he shoots it and we finish it. And after it's all done, I look at him and he goes, "You're that guy. You're that guy." And I walk out and I call my manager. I said, I'm never going to get this role. It was like the worst audition I can imagine. I mean, it just was like, forget it. After I got the role, I asked Chris, I said, "How in the world did I get this?" And he said, it's a funny thing. He said, at that time, all of the auditions were on some kind of either a VHS tape or something, but he had to speed through to get to the next, and he was speeding through looking for an audition, and then he said, "Oh, there's that guy, Dylan Baker." And he said he watched it, and he went, "Wait a minute," and he watched it again, he said, "He can do this. He can do this. This is good." And he decided, only because he didn't see it at all in the room, but he watched it on the videotape and said, "Yeah," and he cast me in it. So I never was going to get the role, he said. So there was definitely some backlash, but I am not smart enough to think ahead to that. I was so excited. It was like I'm being offered this role, fascinating role. I had to do it.
Yeah. What I love when I look back on your career is you obviously are respected in the industry. And so you have a lot of work happening, but you're still able to go and do something like another potentially problematic role with Onur Tukel, the misogynist. Just the idea of doing small things like that. That wasn't even the first film you did with him. You did Applesauce, I think, with him.
Yeah, Applesauce, and then the other one, Catfight.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a level, of course, Todd Solondz is an independent filmmaker, but then this is another layer of independence. Ultra low budget films. What is your thinking when something like this comes around? Is it all about the role?
It's interesting. Onur did a tricky thing to me, and I don't even think he did it on purpose. But when he talked to me about this thing, he said, "Dylan, I don't think you'd be right for this role at all. But do you, I mean, I had somebody that was going to do it and they're not, so I'm auditioning people to do, and the hair went up on the back of my neck and I was like, God damn it, I can show him, I can do it." So I came in and auditioned for it and put it down tape for him. And he said, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this. And, Onur is a hoot. He is just a hoot in the way he looks at life and the way he writes. And we all were kind of blown away by 2016 and everything that happened. So for me, it was a little bit of that. It was a little bit of, I want to do my part in just trying to exercise some of these feelings that I have. And there was also the thing of, we were going to be doing it in a hotel room over the course of like 8 nights. And it's a full-length film. And we didn't have any time to waste. We just kept shooting. And I just had to memorize a whole script in no time and just be ready to go and have these different wonderful character actors coming in and working with me. Right. Especially Jamie Block, who was wonderful. And so, I look back on that and it was really a fun process. But how many times I want to do that, I'm not sure, because it does just about kill you.
And I have to tell you that I asked Onur to send me a little message about you. And he said this: when Dylan agreed to play the lead in The Misogynists, he had about a week to prepare. I think he learned about 110 pages of dialogue in 6 days. And when he got the set, he nailed it. I've never experienced anything like it. Not only that, but between takes, he was fucking funny. So many funny jokes throughout. Sly humor, wit. We shot nights from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And he never complained, never lost his head when I was losing mine. Just a straight up professional and class act human being.
No, Onur's the best. He was so much fun, and I am fascinated by his vision. I'm fascinated to see where he goes next. And I enjoyed so much working with him and being a part of Onur World, which reminded me a little bit of Nikos, because there was a certain chaos going on, and to try and find art through the chaos.
Yeah. Someone asked you once what it was about independent film that you were drawn to, and you said, there's little wait time. On a big shoot, you might have to just sit there and wait for 2 weeks. You gave an example of that. You were waiting for 3 weeks and did one scene on some film.
I think that was, I might have been more than that, but Road to Perdition
that's
took
right.
4 weeks, so many different sets for just one scene in a room. Yeah. And luckily Tom Hanks was there, so I got to hang out with him. And Sam Mendes, which was fantastic. Yeah. But that's a long time to do something. LaRoy, Texas, that I just finished, that was fantastic because every day it was just, okay, let's come to work, get the scenes done, the scenes done. Yeah. There was no waiting around, and there was a lot of fun to that.
I heard that this film was another film where you had very little time to prepare LaRoy, Texas, like 2 days or something like that.
I think that was right. Yeah.
When something like this happens, and here you are playing another monster, what do you do when you know you have very limited time to try and speed up the process that you normally would like to take a little bit longer?
Yeah, well, the nice thing about the character of Harry in LaRoy, Texas, is that he is very self-contained. His work is totally separated from his life. And I had time, very little time, but enough time to kind of fashion a backstory about life that was part, my important part that's going on. But in terms of what his job was and what he had to accomplish, Shane Atkinson and I immediately, I talked to him, and I loved his idea that this was a lunch pail guy, that he goes to work, he gets a job done, he gets paid, he goes home, he finds the next job. They call him up. That literally is just a call, and where is it? When is it? Gone. And he goes and does it, and then finds out how he's going to get paid. I loved that about it because it really informed Harry in every way. There was nothing extraneous. And the interesting things about the script, and why I really liked the script, was there's maybe 2-3 instances of when the job allowed him to be the person he is. Because he's always sort of playing this role. But then there's in the diner, there's in the scene in the beginning with the guy when he's giving him a ride, when all of a sudden he can become who he is and just start letting it out a little bit, just to, because he knows he's in command of the whole thing, and saying, this is the way I look at life, and we all agree, don't we? And you see the other people going, this is a seriously strange guy that I'm talking to, and he's scaring the heck out of me. And I don't think he thinks it's anything scary. It's just the way he looks at life from his viewpoint, which is he's a good family man who happens to have a really terrible profession that he thinks he's separated from. It doesn't affect his home life. And of course, you can't go through life without everything you do affecting your home life as a person.
Right. Talk to me about what you need on the set from that person in command in order for the best that's in you to come out.
That's interesting. I think it's a meeting of the minds. We go back to Happiness and Todd Solondz, who he very much had, and he talks about this, I think, he had one line of direction for each actor. Wow. And for me, when I went into the audition, I had a whole idea of the thing. And before I even put down any tape, before he started filming, he talked to me for about 8 minutes, all about the character, all about and it was so interesting and so developed, and it changed everything that I was going to do from hearing that. And I gave him basically what you see in the film. And so he cast me. Then we got on set, and my first day, it had been 6 weeks, 8 weeks since the audition to us actually starting. And I had gone right back to what I originally thought. And he stopped shooting. He walked me off the set, and he gave me that 8-minute speech again.
Interesting.
And I was like, yes, of course. And we went back in and we started shooting, and I did it, what he was talking about. And he had me, his one line of direction for me was, remember, you're on the knife's edge. You're not too far this way. You're not too far that way. And whatever that meant in each scene.
Yeah.
And it was great direction, and it worked. With Philip Seymour Hoffman, the brilliant Philip Seymour Hoffman, his direction was, this guy never smiles. He never smiles. And if you look at Happiness, Philip never smiles except one moment when he's just made one of his phone calls to Laura Flynn Boyle, and she all of a sudden star 99s him or whatever it is, and says, hello, is this da-da-da? And he realizes it's her, and he hangs up the phone, and all of a sudden there's a guy at his door that says, hey, Bill, did you see that game last night? And he goes, yeah, great game. And it's the only time that Philip smiles in the entire film. So,
what is it about this focused, very minimal direction? What does that do for you?
The great thing about that, and it's interesting because we were talking a little bit about what a director does. Do you say too much? Do you say too little? And I have learned, I've also directed plays. The first play I directed, my wife was in, and I found myself jumping up out of my chair and going, okay, this character should do blah, 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 and acting it out for the person, then sitting back down again. And I'd jump up, and after about a week, Becky just pulled me aside and she said, listen, it's all great, but if you tell me what to do one more time, I'm gonna belch you. And I learned a lesson there, which was, don't tell the actors how to do it. Get them to figure out how they would do what you want to do. If they're just rote, imitating, it's only going to go so far. But if their essence is coming out in the route you want it to be, then that can be a full performance. That can get to where you want it to go. So that's the wonderful thing about minimal direction. And Todd could have taken me laboriously through the scene and spoken each thing, or he could have given me that guide and say, okay, it's a little too far this way at this point, let's go back, see if you can find that that middle ground. And he was able to do that so that it all was generated from me. Right. And that's why he was, so magic as a director in that film.
Do you think that you have to be a certain kind of actor, though, for that minimal amount of direction to be perfect and for you to ignite your agency in that? Are there some actors that actually need that talking it out, showing exactly what to do type of thing? There
are actors who really like a lot of interaction. There's actors that and it's not like it's a bad thing. I got to work with Andrea Martin, directed her in a play, and she loves to get feedback on what she's trying, because Andrea is a comic genius. She is, there are no limitations to her. She can go in any which way you want, and she wants to know, is this going, because she is not gonna stop herself by saying, I can only do this and that and this and that. She's going to try things and go this way and go that way. And I learned that she wanted to know, does this work or does it not? And if it wasn't, I was like, I liked it better when, this was going, and she'd go, great, okay. Because that was something she could work with and it helped her.
Yeah.
But then there are I've worked with Jeff Daniels. I've never directed him, but Jeff Daniels, the less you say and just let Jeff go, the better off you're going to be. And that's why he works so well with Woody Allen, because Woody Allen doesn't say anything.
Right.
So
you are in a play right now. You're going to be performing tonight.
Right. It's a play called Corruption up at the Mitzi Newhouse at the Lincoln Center.
Right. So there has been only a few times when actors have come on the day they have to go and perform. And I find it fascinating because I just can't imagine relaxing or doing anything during the day, knowing that I have to go on a Broadway stage that night. I just can't imagine functioning as a human being during the day. So starting from there, as asking this question, do you have a certain ritual that you do? Maybe when you get to the theater, do you have to get there at a certain time? What is your preparation work on a day like this?
There are those stories of Mary Martin when she was doing Peter Pan, or when she was doing, a role in a huge musical, or Gwen Verdon. And they basically would, when the play was done, it would take them a couple hours to eat something and have a few drinks and smoke a pack of cigarettes, and then wake up in the morning at 2:00 in the afternoon and stay in bed because they're exhausted, and then somehow get to the theater an hour and a half before the show, and then get themselves back and ready. For me, I don't need that. I can decompress after a play, and I can get up in the morning and take a swim. I'm lucky enough to live and have a health club in my building at Manhattan Plaza where there's a swimming pool, and I can take a good swim and feel good, and then go about my day and do whatever I have to do. I like to get to the theater at least a half an hour before half hour, and I like to warm up my voice. I like to loosen up my body, loosen up my because it's a Corruption, which is a fantastic play written by J.T. Rogers and directed by Bartlett Sher. It is English characters, so I've got to get into an accent, and it's a different frame of mind than I have coming from Virginia. So I have to get my mouth around that and start letting the accent, carry me into where that character exists. And then I kind of get ready. But what doesn't change is that you've still got to walk on and react to what's there. It's like whatever is out there will feed me and get me through the night, because I'm working with talented actors. And getting to do these scenes are terribly exciting, because even though we've done them again and again and again and again, it's new each night. And what's the audience? What is the audience like? And what do the lights do? And did that thing go out? And you've got to react to everything as your character would. So,
is there more of a situation in when you're doing a play where toward the end of a run, as this is, I think there's only one more week, right?
Yeah, after this week, yeah.
Is it always where you're like, oh, we're finally getting it now? Or is it, oh, thank God this is ending?
It almost invariably is, thank God this is ending. And it's not because you don't love it. It's not because you don't love the people.
Yeah.
But boy, I learned something as an actor very early on, which was there's something great about doing something where you know it's going to end.
Yeah.
And even though you're loving it and you love the people and you have a party after that final show, it's nice to wake up in the morning and go, what's now? What something new. Let's do something different now.
Yeah.
And I do love that. After this, I've done a little stage. It's like, okay, I'd like to do a little film and TV. So we'll see what happens.
Dylan Baker, this podcast can now end. If it's somehow ended by an asteroid goes off course and we all die, I think I if I have a consciousness in death or something, I'll be like, oh, at least Dylan Baker was on the podcast. Okay? I mean that. Come back anytime.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.